Before we proceed with the agenda, I do want to take a moment of silence. The community and the district had lost someone important, a former teacher for Riverview or Lakeview, also a parent who sent children to the district. So if we could have a moment of silence. Thank you. Okay, proceeding with the presentations, looks like we have a March 11th presentation, which is today, the preliminary budget for 2024-2025. Dr. Forte will give a moment to get the audio video set up.
Okay, we have our preliminary budget, and as we said in committees, this was definitely a challenging budget. We'd like to highlight some of the things that are in the budget, and then we'll go through where the tax impact, where the money comes from, and some other important financial things later on. But first, we'd just like to highlight a few of the curriculum items in here. We have some new stuff, new Ed Puzzle online education program. We have some money for Dreambox online education program. We have K2 mentor texts, the budget for Link It, which is a district-wide system, wood shop supplies, which is in year 4, approximately 3 or 4 that we had the new wood supply. We started in the summers and
5 years, but
5
2
years.
years is an elective.
Okay. And that's something in the middle school that we do with hand tools, not like the traditional wood shop we had when we were kids, but now it's a wood shop with hand tools, and it's a very popular class. Some other items we do have in the budget, we have some money for personnel, the possibility of a new position, including a supervisor of support services. That position may be part-time or full-time. We still haven't determined it, but the money is in the budget for that position, as well as any other personnel needs we might want to include. Obviously, some of our costs go up, like our health benefits. The St. Mary's lease is something that's going to. You're doing it for me, Rick. The St. Mary's lease is something that is a recurring cost. We have some increases in our special education and tuition services. The pension system, if you're not aware of this, the state pays for all certificated staff, but the district pays for all non-certificated staff. And that number went up by $82,900 for next year. Our free lunch cost is now up to $100,000. And just the increases in labor costs from one year to the next is almost $900,000. So we have capital projects, and these capital projects are funded with grants and reserves. So we have money in the budget that we've saved over the years, and we call them, there's capital and maintenance reserve, and we have money in the budget to be able to fund projects. And we've funded over $10 million worth of projects since I've been here in 2014. And this year we have a few projects on the agenda here. And not all of these are definitely going to happen during the year, or not all of them we're 100% sure we're going to do it all. Like one of the ones I'll just point out is that the kindergarten bathroom project at Riverview. There's money that we have in the budget for planning and for the completion of the additional 2 single person bathrooms for the kindergarten, to make future kindergarten rooms if we needed to. Currently, we don't have any extra rooms with bathrooms in the district. So if we needed to add one, for example, a pre-K or a kindergarten, we don't have a room, so we would have to ask for a waiver. And I know over the years, we've been trying to get away from waivers and not having any kind of substandard space or a waiver because we don't have the bathroom. So this would be something that we would do over the next year or two, just to be prepared for if we do need to add another kindergarten. The sidewalk project at Riverview is a safety concern. Basically, it'll help the traffic flow of the pedestrians and the motorists that getting from the annex to the main building. Currently, the students walk either through the parking lot or in front of the parking lot. And there's been a few occasions when motorists, I guess, were impatient and didn't let the students pass and drove into the parking lot while the students were walking. And our officers and our administrators and our staff felt like it was a safety issue. There was also an incident on St. Mary's Place where a motorcyclist did not stop for the traffic and didn't actually hit, but being very close to hitting our Class 3 officer. So this project is to try to prevent that and make it a safer walk across the street. Not sure if you've seen it, but the back of Riverview, the stairway leading down to Field 6 and the stairway leading out of the building in the back are both in disrepair, and there's money in the budget to renovate both of those, actually replace both. There's money in the budget to repave the small parking lot at Riverview. We always have to do brick repointing. Then we have a budget line in the capital funds for security upgrades district-wide. That would be for all buildings, and that would be a pretty comprehensive upgrade. And then we also have some other repairs and maintenance contingencies in the budget. So I put in big words on the bottom, if you look at it, unexpended funds and grant reimbursements will impact these balances positively. So it looks like at the end of this year, we won't have much in maintenance and capital reserve. But remember, for example, Damaris, help me with my numbers if I'm wrong. We withdrew $2.9 million for a HVAC project that ended up costing around $1.5 million. And we're supposed to receive 75% of that money, of the 1.5 million, back as well from the grant. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. We budgeted $2.9 million, but we withdrew 1.5 for the actual cost of the project. Out of that 1.5, the district will receive back 75%. And this has to do with the New Jersey Clean Energy Act grant that we submitted last year. This project is estimated to be completed by the end of this school year.
So, like, for example, even though we withdrew 2.9 million and we're only spending 1.5 million, 1.4 million right off the bat goes back into the reserves. Plus, when we get the 75% of that 1.5 million, that goes back in.
That is correct.
So I'm just trying to make sure you understand that we have more money in reserves. We will have more money in reserves than it looks. And that also includes after we purchased 46 Nicole Drive. So the preliminary budget with the tax levy, we have an increase in state aid this year. Just to give a little recap, the School Funding Reform Act was updated with S2 a few years back. And this S2 is meant to provide districts like ours who were shortchanged in state aid since 2008. We were shortchanged millions of dollars over that time between 2008 and 2000. I think it was 2008 to 2018. And in those 10 years, we were not receiving our full funding. When S2 was passed, the state was supposed to bring our full funding up all the way up to, like I said, full funding. And that was supposed to take 7 years. This is the 7th year. So this year we received $480,000 additional state aid. And this budget does include the use of that $480,000 to fill some holes, because as I went through before, a lot of our line items went up a great deal, and there would have to be some pretty serious cuts if we had to cut that $480,000 too. So we're grateful we got that. And Damaris did a great job working on getting our waiver, there was an issue with our benefits. You wanted to speak about that?
A couple of years ago, the state implemented what is called Chapter 44, and that has to do with health benefits savings. A lot of districts that has switched from private to state, sometimes they had savings, sometimes Governor Murphy also reduced the increase in health benefits a few years ago. And due to that decrease, some district did have savings in health benefits. So every year we are required to enter the actual costs and how many staff are enrolled in health benefits. Based on that information, the Department of Education determines if the district has savings or not. If the district do have some savings, they will reduce the tax levy to the taxpayer. In other words, if we are required to go 2%, they might say, no, you had to go back to decreasing tax levy. This year, we were in jeopardy of losing $3 million of tax levy. That would have impacted our financial, it would have been a real drastic impact to the financial of the school districts. Luckily, we were able to appeal that and rework the numbers with the county, and they waived that $3 million. And in addition to that, after reworking the numbers, they decided to give us some health benefits waiver increases, as well as enrollment waiver for this coming year. So what I ended up, originally we had some backup for the past few years, which equated to approximately $495,000. Out of that backup, after the health insurance waiver and enrollment waiver, we only used 292, leaving about 200,000 for next school year backup. So we did not utilize 100% of the backup due to the health insurance waiver and enrollment waivers, which the resolution will reflect those amounts as well.
Just to clarify, to make sure everybody understands, next year we will go into the year with a $200,000 in banked cap.
Correct.
Damaris, would you speak about the next slide a little bit about the lines on the expenditure side?
Sure. On this slide, most of the expenditures are a lot of these are contract costs or other professional services that are mostly contract services, health employee benefits, support services, salaries, as well as the capital projects and capital and reserve maintenance that we allocated to the budget. The total budget for the 24-25 school year is $41,982,000. However, that includes withdrawn from reserves, capital and maintenance reserve, in the amount of $1,570,000, as well as $378,000 from grant, federal and state grant. So technically, the the levy itself is about $35 million or so.
The levies on the previous slide of 35,895,000. And then the preliminary budget tax levy. So the majority of our money comes from the local taxpayers. Approximately 10% comes from other sources, which include state and federal sources. This year's budget has an impact on the average assessed home of $179 per year. And one of the things that's a little confusing, if you don't mind, Damaris, you can explain the difference between how it works, where we have the fiscal year and the school year. It's a little different.
The school year tax levy works from July through June of each school year, and is calculated mathematically 2% of the last tax levy. In other words, if we had 35 million last year, we just calculate 2% to come up with our fiscal year tax levy. However, the town calculate the tax impact based on a calendar year, what is January through December. And we are usually behind 6 months in tax payments because it's get roll over into the next year. So they would just take half of our tax levy and pay it during the July through December, and the next tax levy will be paid to the district on the next budget year. So it crosses between fiscal and calendar year. It's a little more challenging. Sometimes the impacts are definitely different, and it has to do with the crossover of calendar versus fiscal, as well as the valuation. Depending on the valuation of the property, if it goes up or down, that will have some impact as well too.
So the next slide is our budget facts. So this budget includes funds for facility repairs and upgrades. It continues to fund the behavioral services program with St. Clair's. As a matter of fact, that number is going up. This budget still includes funds for lunches for economically disadvantaged students. However, we are investigating the USDA free lunch program, and Damaris is working on that now. The district continues to partnership with the township for security officers and other services. There's a brand new 5-year lease for the Riverview Annex for grades 4 and 5 from Riverview. And really the major cost drivers this year are labor and benefit costs increase, special ed tuition and professional services. And we included in the special ed tuition and professional services is increased funds for transportation. And that's including unbudgeted kind of emergency situations that we've had to deal with over the last couple of years that is definitely changing, I would say changing, and it definitely having more of an impact on our budget than it used to. And that's our presentation for today, and we'd be happy to take any questions, anything we can go over with you again, we'd be happy to.
Thank you, Dr. Forte. Thank you, Ms. Gorowski. Really appreciate the time and effort you put into this presentation. Before I open it up to the board, it looks like we're going to be voting on this budget as part of the addendum. Is that the intent and goal to have?
We have to vote on the preliminary budget by the 25th of March. 20th of March.
We have to submit.
But it has to be actually in their hands by the 20th of March. So this is the only meeting we have. And then the second meeting in April is when the final budget. So there is the ability to change between now and April. We don't really want to, but we could change in between then.
Okay. The only reason why I'm asking that is because I do feel like this information is being presented to a lot of the board members for the first time. So I don't know how much questions or if they've had time to really digest everything that was given to us. And it's a lot of information. So I really appreciate all the work that you did. I do feel that I myself have a million questions that I feel like we could spend a lot of time on. So, but yeah, let me open it up to the board members. Any questions for Dr. Forte or Ms. Gorowski?
Damaris, and Steve too, I guess, state aid, we've seen a nice increase in state aid. We've talked about this for a while where we were underfunded when it comes to our piece of state aid. We've seen a nice increase year over year of, this year is about 16.5%, but, last couple years have been 20+% in that bucket. Now, granted, it's a small bucket, right? So the dollar figures aren't tremendously high, but still, the increase that we saw this year, was that due to the state budget adding? We know it's never been fully funded. Is it just adding more funding, or are we? I just want to make sure we're not getting into a place where we're an overfunded district, and then we're going to be shocked 5 years down the road when they come back and say, "Hold on, we want to reset something." I guess they're following S2, correct? I mean, I'm sorry I'm asking this on the spot. I think if you don't have the answer, we can certainly table it, but just wanted to make sure we're kind of just getting. I think it's because they're funding more in that budget line item, but let me know what you think.
It's a combination of both. It's a catch up after S2, but as well, there's the formula of enrollment increases, as well as the adequacy. But it has to do with enrollment increase based on the numbers that we report on the ASSA October 15th of every year. So yes, it is an allocation of both scenarios.
Thank you.
And actually today, Damaris and I were talking about the fact that what if we do become an overfunded and they want to take some money back? So that's one of those ones, like, who knows, right? I mean, that's a tough one. I know Morris Hills just lost like 1.1 million this year in their what's it called, state aid, but we're an S2 positive district. They were not. We're an S2 positive. So there are several S2 negative districts in our immediate area, like Randolph and Roxbury, and Washington Township, losing money, and we're on the gaining end. So whether or not they change that and take it back later on, I don't think anybody would know that at this time. I really don't know. It's going to be a political climate thing, I would think.
Yeah, the only other comment I would make, I know we talked quite a bit in the finance committee about kind of, obviously we've got a lot of strains on the budget, as Dr. Forte just went through. And, one of the things I had Damaris put together, and it was helpful to me, and I know it was in the committee minutes, but if you didn't get a chance to take a look at it, I would highly encourage you to take a look at the historical analysis budget. That looks at, I think it goes back about 5 years, how much, the tax levy percentage increase has been, as well as some of the major kind of buckets, and how much that increase has been. I think the one that stuck with me as I look through, there's some that have high percentages right now, like out of district placements, as Dr. Forte mentioned. They've jumped up this year. Some of those a lot of that's kind of out of our control directly. But that was about almost a 30% increase, but it's about, under $300,000. I think the one line item that I saw that kind of hit me, and it's such a big number for us, obviously, is our labor costs, right? I mean, Dr. Forte says all the time, we're in the business of people here. So that line item has gone up almost every year, double the 2% cap. And it's our largest bucket. And that's one I think we really need to continue to take a look at very closely. Some of that is obviously, we want to have the best staff. So we've done a great job with negotiations and getting them the appropriate salary increases. But I also think that as we look at new positions, we've got to be really careful, because generally positions are added and we usually don't remove positions, right? We always need more, which is understandable. But it's a line item that certainly concerns me as I'm looking at this, and it's gone up, $4 million in a matter of 5 years. That number continues to rise pretty quickly, and it's certainly the area that I would highly encourage us to take a look at. It's out of a $40 million budget, it's $25 million. So clearly, that's the area I think that we've got to make sure we keep an eye on, doing the right thing in that area, and seeing, do we, being critical on, do we need additional people, or can we reutilize individuals we have, or, what's the value in all that? Because And there is, I know there's always value, but I don't want to downplay it. I just know that that's our biggest area in the budget for an opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Anyone else?
Yeah, no, actually, Mike touched on something that I wanted to touch on. First of all, I mean, amazing job. I feel like every year, Damaris and the Finance Committee kind of pull a rabbit out of the hat. I know this year was a particularly challenging year, so I'm really encouraged actually by the budget and what we're able to keep in. So thank you for that. Yeah, labor costs. Being on negotiations, I have obviously a perspective on this. We've gone through a couple of negotiation cycles. We have really looked at trying to make our rates more competitive to attract, especially new teachers, good, effective teachers, and that's obviously cost us more money. So, I mean, to Mike's point, I think we have good people, but I do think we have to be really careful about what we do from here in terms of adding positions, because it is obviously one of our biggest expenses. I think we're much more competitive than we were before, so I think we're in a good spot. But it is a cost that we really, really, really have to focus on.
Thank you, Mr. Capello.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what's been said so far. That I really appreciate what it took to keep what we have in the budget. But each year it seems like a bit of a nail biter, and it's starting to get concerning. Things feel a little more fragile than I would hope them to be, and there's just so many moving pieces with the influx of students potentially coming in that we keep talking about, and that's also means more personnel. And how do we do that? It seems like, I mean, from my opinion, I don't think that we're not a wasteful district. We're the money is being spent properly, but we're getting tighter and tighter. So what do we do about it? And that's a real concern, because I want to hold on to the great product that we have.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Yeah, please.
Just
Mr.
add one more thing. I think, Cliff, you bring up some good points, and I think I say this every budget year that there's got to be, and I think this year may have been the closest we felt to like a breaking point of you can't have a 2% cap for your tax levy when every single line item goes up greater than 2%. And I think that the reason why this year was so impactful or so difficult was partially because if you look at the general economy we're in, nothing goes up 2%, right? I mean, inflation is way higher than that, right? So every little, even smaller line items where maybe like, fuel or our cost for electricity and natural gas and utilities and everything have been fairly stable over the years. The last like 2 years have just gone up through the roof. So I think it gets more and more difficult. I had a lot of conversations with Dr. Forte about the budget, and I was probably pushing him pretty hard on, let's get this out. We really got to get it to the board to make sure we can kind of take a look at it. And in that conversation, he said to me, in his time as superintendent, not just here in Denville, but this was one of the most difficult budgets he's had to go through. And I echo the comments that were made from many of the board members earlier that Dr. Forte, Damaris, Dr. Cullis, unbelievable work on what you guys have put together in this budget. It's not easy to do. It's not easy to find. I mean, everybody puts their requests in from administration, appropriately so, and asking for more resources and more people. Want to make sure that they get the best product of their students, like Cliff said. But with that, they've got to kind of pick and choose as to which they're going to fund and which ones we have to either hold off on or not fully fund. So there's a lot in here, and but it just keeps. I agree with you. It keeps getting harder, Cliff. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, I was asking Steve, is there any talk at the state level of pushing that 2% tax levy cap a little bit higher with inflation? I think it's a third rail. I don't think anybody is going to touch it because it's just so impactful to our taxpayers, which is understandable, but it's hard. I mean, if everybody had a local budget in your house that can only go up 2% every year, I'm not, I mean, everything my expenditures are way higher than 2% higher this year than they ever were. So it does get more and more difficult, I think, because the macroeconomic environment we're in now too.
Mr. Cass, did you want to add?
Yes, I'll put in historic comment. When Mr. Parisian was around on the board and we used to go through the budget exercise, he used to frequently say that we're going to run out of money sometime. And I compliment the administration. They did a great job on a very challenging budget. But discretionary spending is very important. And when you have you're locked into making payments on, the salaries, the health benefits, it becomes more difficult to find money for discretionary spending, which is not frivolous. It's very important, the things we do with discretionary spending, especially with maintaining our buildings. And we haven't done a referendum. We've done probably about $12 million in repairs now and maintenance to our buildings without doing a referendum. So that's important too. But more state aid, more federal aid. I don't know where it's going to come from, but Mike makes a good point about going above the 2%. So those are all things to keep in mind for the budget we do next time. It's going to be very, very difficult year after year.
Thank you, Mr. Cass.
We basically have two new departments too. We never had a security department, and our mental health department has grown, doubled. So, even though it happened a couple of years ago, it still stresses the budget every year because at one point we had to put it in the budget. It's grown and it's new, right? So every year when it increases, because those costs increase as well, or you bring a building like Riverview Annex on, and now you got to put another person in there. It is important to note what Don just said. We did all of this without any additional funds. Like we've never gone to the public and asked for different additional funds. And adding like 2 full departments and a building without any additional funds this is where you're seeing now. Like this is how it's coming out. So I brought to the finance committee a possibility, which is to go for a separate proposal, put a couple things on it, and maybe go out to the public to do that. That might be something that if we want to keep operating the way we're operating, that might be more of a need than a want, unless we want to make serious cuts to things. So that is a possibility. I shared with you a local district, the way they did it, and they use our same attorney to say we could work with the wording, and it is something that we could possibly do. Right now, the law requires that you do it in November, which is good because you don't have to pay for the election. Makes sense, and you'll have a good turnout. But the funds aren't available until halfway through the school year. So it's a little awkward, but you could do it that way. So I throw it out to the board as a consideration. It might not be. I'll go out and say it's not a need today. Like we can make it, but I think that there's going to be a point where we're going to be saying we have to do it at one point.
Thank you, Dr. Forte. Any other board members who haven't spoken yet, would you like to add anything as well?
I just want to note that
Dr. Cullis,
we have a
yes.
very invested community. And so when we had our strategic plan, came up with great ideas and things that they really want for the schools. But with every one of those came additional, keeping the class sizes small and additional programming with mental health and SEL and so forth. So all of those we do want to consider and keep those in the forefront, trying to meet those needs as well. And almost every extra thing that we do, like every assembly, every guest speaker, summer programs are all grant funded. Like those are all things that we're going out and finding money to pay for those extra things. So some districts may include that in ours. We have gone out to try to find, or otherwise we would not be able to do with like the support of the Ed Foundation and so forth. We would not be able to do all these programs without those groups.
Thank you, Dr. Cullis. All right, if I'll wrap up by saying a few things. Since I'm a numbers person, I'll start off with the numbers. When I was part of the finance committee under the leadership of Mr. Anderson and Mr. Capello, we had an opportunity to reduce the tax levy under the 2% cap, and with the work of the administration, we were able to. So I appreciate the spreadsheet, Mr. Anderson. This is a great spreadsheet, so I'm going to be using it. So 2021 to 2022, our tax levy increase was only a 0.5%, 0.75% the following year. Now, when the finances were, or when the budget was in strain, I guess is the word I'm going to use, we had to go past the 2%, and we took whatever bank cap that we had and we went up to 6%. So this year it looks like we're looking at a 3.43%, which in my opinion is something that is manageable, and it's amazing that we can continue working with just a 3.43% increase with a over 30 million or over $40 million budget. The other thing that we were able to do, and I think this leads to former leadership and best practices that were created over different administrations and different regimes, actually under the guidance of Dr. Forte as well and Ms. Karowski. We have healthy reserves. Our reserve funds continue to be at a healthy state. We budget a lot, but yet a lot is returned at the end of the year due to the hard work of the administration, such as grants and stuff like that allows us to put back monies back in. However, after the result of that committee, the Space Considerations Committee, and after the strategic plan, one of the biggest challenges that I think we're going to have moving forward is labor, is the headcount. Now, I don't mean to treat it as numbers, right? Because as Dr. Moore, you eloquently put, we have a wonderful product. The school districts and the teachers and the administration have developed this culture, this community, this education system that other people want, that drives residents into our district, into our community, and continues to bolster the community, and we continue to get more and more families in. So one of the concerns that I have moving forward, and maybe it's not from this budget, but it's from future budgets. This is a conversation that Mr. Anderson and I had, is the hiring. I'm not against hiring new individuals. I mean, we have turnover, and of course we're going to need to replace, but also we're going to need to expand our teacher base, right? Because if we have more classrooms, if we do have increased student enrollment, then we will have to hire more, and we have to find ways to hire within a 2% budget, right? So your idea or your second proposal comment, I think, is a wonderful idea. Mr. Capello sent me an email over the weekend that we might have an advocate in Assemblywoman Begoli, I believe her name. Yeah, Assemblywoman Begoli. So I sent a letter to Assemblywoman Begoli, and I also sent a letter to Assemblyman Bergen, so that we can maybe take transportation off of our operating budget so that we can find more rooms to handle the labor. But the other thing I'm concerned about is the distribution. We have staff helping with special ed, we have staff helping with general ed, and then we have administrative staff. What percentages are going up at what rate? That's something that I'd like committees to think about for future budgets. Are we looking at a significant increase in special ed hiring or expenditures, labor costs, because we have more ISPs, which led to another conversation with Mr. Anderson. Can we have students graduate from ISPs? Like, when they go off to high school, they are going to be faced with a difficult task of adjusting to the high school curriculum and everything else. So do we do enough to get these students prepared and get them out of the ISPs? Or, is there some sort of graduation from ISPs that we can then potentially maybe have less staff, or something like that? I'm throwing thoughts and ideas out there because these are great questions that come up with different conversations. And when they graduate high school and when they go to college, they might not have ISPs. So is there ways? Have we talked about, are there school districts that are doing figuring out ways to get students off of ISPs and stuff like that? So emotional health, I believe, is an important expenditure. Oh, yes, and we need to continue to fund that. But is that something that should be included in second proposal or second question as well? So all these questions, all these things that we as board members can think about during our committee meetings and seeing if we can challenge the state regulations that are tying our hands, if they are, and supporting the administration where we can, however we can. So thank you for the presentation. Thank you for hearing me. And if there are no other comments or questions, we'll move on to the agenda. All right. Looks like we have the next budget hearing, as mentioned, on April 29th, as well as presentations in May and June. Superintendent comments, please.
Okay. Committees in April. So the way spring break falls this year, most likely we're going to have, we already agreed for the IMP committee. Most likely our next committee meetings are going to be after the first meeting of the month, which is not what we normally like to do. But because spring break falls on Good Friday, which is the 29th of March, and our meeting is on April 8th, we're looking at doing our meeting the Thursday after the first meeting, which is not the normal way that we like to do it, but we've already decided to do it with IMP. Finance, you guys can talk about it and figure out if there's another way you want to do it. We might be able to do a meeting on the day of the meeting, like of the board meeting on the 8th, if everybody wants to do that. So that's another option. So who's the chair of are you, Mike, the chair? You want to just think about it and see what you guys want to do? Okay. I shared a letter with the board that is going to go out this week to the public. It really focused on three important things. One is just public discourse with our staff and reminding people that their demeanor needs to be in a professional manner. It cannot be, they cannot be inappropriate with our staff in any way. And they're just being reminded of that. Also, a very important message. And sometimes this is like inadvertent, but all profanity and inappropriate language gets filtered. It will not come to the person, no matter what. Even if you're trying to say, like, this kid said this to my kid, if you write that in there, it won't come back. Now, if you put like an asterisk in place of a key letter or two, you can do that if that's the purpose. But they've been made aware of it before, but I'm reminding everybody that if you send something to us, to anybody in the district that has any inappropriate language, not only will it not go through, but you won't know it didn't go through. So I posted a statement from my letter right on where people have to get people's contacts. So when they get the contacts, they'll see any, language will be filtered out. Next year, we're also going to have that added to the Genesis sign off that everybody has to read all the things. One of them is going to be if there is any inappropriate language, profanity, anything like that, that you will not know that it didn't go through too. And then the last thing is we're having a little bit of an issue. I've spoken to the board in an executive session about this, with children recording people on their phones or their watches or whatever. And there even has been some instances of it being done in the bathroom. So I'm reminding everybody that that is not acceptable, and that if there is any instances of somebody videoing anybody in the bathroom, that we are going to report it to the police. Whether or not the police consider it something that they need to investigate, that's up to them, but it will be reported if somebody's videoing people in the bathroom. So policy 5516, it's a current board policy, does not allow for any of this. So students are not permitted to have anything that can on them during the day in class unless they have permission that can record or transmit. So a cell phone, a watch, anything like that. They're not permitted to use those things during the day. So this is reminding everybody that any devices like that need to be put away. If it's seen that you're using it, it will be taken away and told you to put it where it's, put it in your backpack, put it in your locker. If it happens a second time, it'll be confiscated and parents will have to come in to pick it up. So it's just reminding everybody of those processes. The calendar for 23-24, we used 3 snow days so far. January, well, one was a flood day. January 10, January 16, and February 13. We have 5 built into the calendar. The current last day is set for June 19th, which is a Wednesday. Valley View graduation is June 17th. So most likely, if we don't use any more emergency closing days, the last day of school will be Monday, January 17th. I will put this out. I'm sorry, June 17th. I will put this out to the public, but I typically wait until after March. I think it's too much wishful thinking. So in April, we'll put that out to the public so everybody knows what the plan is. And that's the superintendent comments.
Thank you, Dr. Forte. Dr. Cullis, Assistant Superintendent comments, please.
Yes, there's so many activities that are going on in the spring. I really encourage families to look at the Friday folder and Dr. Forte's newsletter, because that's a great place to see all the things that are going on. A few highlights. The Blues and Beyond 8th grade residency started March 4th and runs to the 27th. If any of the board members would like to attend the final show, it's at 1 o'clock in the Valley View Gym on March 27th. Again, a thank you to the Denville Ed Foundation, because they continue to partner with us on this residency, and it's been incredible for our students. Right now, the fifth graders are doing not only the Math 24 tournament at Lakeview, they're also doing the Science Vocabulary Challenge at both schools through March. So there are a lot of different contests going on. We also have the Academic Bowl and the Geography Bee and the Spelling Bee. There's a lot of things going on the next 2 months. We have a guest author coming at Riverview on March 22nd. It's Martha Atima. And this is one of those experiences that I mentioned that our staff went out and found this author. It's really a cool story. One of our teachers was using this book, and it's just an amazing book, but we really didn't know much about it. And it's not published anymore. It's only published in one area in the Netherlands, which is, the story is based out of there, but the author lives in Canada. And our literacy coach found the author and developed a relationship with her. And she sold us very economically the last copies that were in English, and also agreed at no cost to come and talk with our students about the experience in World War II and living in the Netherlands. It's kind of it's a World War II Nazi story from her family, which is really incredible. Conferences this week, Wednesday, Thursday are conferences, but we have an early dismissal Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So don't forget about that. Watch out for the middle schoolers. There are a lot of walkers on those days. Kindergarten registration is open, so please find the pre-registration form at denville.org. We currently have 162 kindergartners registered, 74 at Lakeview, 56 at Riverview, 9 in the Flex Zone, and 23 preschool that will be placed. And this concludes the Assistant Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Cullis. Could you repeat the kindergarten numbers one more time, please?
162.
Thank you. Okay, and moving on to business administrator comments. Mrs. Gorowski, if you don't mind.
I just want to say thank you to all the boards for completing the ethic disclosure forms. Everybody has completed. It's 100% submitted. Thank you. And also thank you to the Finance Committee for their input and all their hard work and guiding us through this difficult preliminary budget.
Great, thank you very much. And at this time, we open up the board to public comments at 8:20 p.m. Thank you. So there is no one on the virtual meeting, and there's no one in the chambers. So we will close public comments at 8:20 p.m. Okay. Moving on to old business, no action to be taken. Mr. Capello, could you take us through old business, please?
I'd be happy to. At the next meeting, I or someone else will be moving items A, B, and C under old business. A are the reports from February 2024, Treasurer of School Monies and Board Secretary. B are the education reports, report of student enrollment, and the report of the health office for February 2024. And finally, the minutes from our work session and executive session meeting of February 12th, 2024, and regular session and executive session meeting February 26th, 2024.
Thank you very much. Okay, and then we'll move on to the new business action to be taken. Or Dr. Arunachasan, if you want to take us through personnel, please.
Sure. If there's no objection, I'd like to move for the following items. Under new business action to be taken, one is new hires, resignations, retirements, leaves, extra pay salary adjustments. There's one item A on the main agenda, and then there is B and C in the addendum. And also there is a school bus driver approval to be hired and trained. And item number 3 to the board to approve the substitutes. 3 of them.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sedelis, who seconded the motion. Questions or comments?
If anyone would like to get to know on the addendum, Mrs. Thompson, Sadeja Thompson, you can watch on Wednesday. She is a contestant on Survivor this season, so it's pretty cool. But it started last week, so on Wednesdays. The kids will love it.
That's awesome. It looks like we have a potential new hire for school bus drivers then. That seems good. Thank you.
Correct. We will be training this individual and hopefully they will obtain their CDL and we can hire them.
Just to share with the rest of the board, Ms. Kurowski and I had a meeting with Ms. Greenhagen, Stacy Greenhagen, who dug a little deeper into the CDL requirements. And apparently about 6 months ago or a year ago, they loosened the restrictions on the CDLs as well as what it means, their responsibilities as a school bus driver. So my personal hopes is that we might be able to get more CDL drivers or school bus drivers because of the changes that they made in Trenton. So.
That is correct.
All right, if there's no other comments, roll call, please.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Sedelis,
Yes.
Dr. Arunachasan,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Capello,
Yes.
Mr. Kim.
Yes. And under instruction and program, Dr. Moore, can you take us through that, please?
Yes. I'd like to approve the following resolution under instruction and program, that the board approve for summer programs, the extended school year ESY and the Denville Accelerated Learning Academy DALA.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Thank you, Dr. Arunachasan. Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Sedelis,
Yes.
Dr. Arunachasan,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Capello,
Yes.
Mr. Kim.
Yes. Before we move on to finance, I realized that we skipped an item on the addendum under personnel. So, Ms. Growski, can we revisit the personnel section?
You got it.
Oh, forgive me. Forgive me. Okay. I think my mind is elsewhere. So, in that case, then we'll move right into finance. Mr. Anderson, if you want to take us through that, please.
Sure. If there are no objections under C, finance, I'd like to move item number 1. Let it be resolved that the board approve the agreement with Kid Therapy LLC to provide occupational therapy, feeding therapy consultation for a student not to exceed $5,320 for the 2023-2024 school year. And number 2, let it be resolved that the board approve the following students' changes in service for the program listed on the dates identified. And this program is Commission for the Blind dates 2023-2024 school year, cost of $2,642. And finally, on the addendum, item number 3, which is the tentative budget to be approved for 2024-2025 school year. And all the information as far as the numbers and information has been provided via the presentation earlier from Dr. Forte.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Thank you, Mr. Capello. Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Seydellis,
Yes.
Dr. Aruna Jatasan,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Capello,
Yes.
Mr. Kim.
Yes. Okay, on to the next item, operations. Mr. Cass, would you take us through that, please? Oh, actually, no, I don't see anything for us to vote on tonight under operations. Do you agree, Mr. Cass, or? Oh, I see. Later. Okay, so since we're not voting on anything for operations, we'll move on to new business, no action to be taken. Dr. Runijatasan, can you take us through the personnel that we will be voting on next week, next meeting?
Yep. The next meeting, either myself or one of my colleagues here on the board will be moving for the following items. There is, again, new hires, resignations, retirements, leaves, extra pay, salary, and adjustments. Items number 1, A through E. And then there is several leaves, which is item number 2, 3, 4, 5. And then there is item number 6 is for approval of a 12-month staff holiday calendar for 2024-2025 school year.
Any questions or comments? Okay, moving on to instruction and program. Dr. Moore, can you take us through that, please?
Sure. At the next board meeting, either myself or someone else will move to approve the following resolutions under instruction and program, workshops, and expenses. Number 1, we have item A, which is annual convention. And number 2 is to approve Mary Oates professional development at Morris Catholic High School.
Yeah, just I always like to point this out because I think it's important for the public to understand. Those Title II funds are pass through. Is that correct? Because the Catholic school cannot accept that money directly, so we act as a pass through to them.
Thank you for clearing that up, Mr.
Curiosity, what would happen if we voted no?
No.
So for the record, nothing, yeah. For the record, it might be a little difficult for the administration, but
Interestingly, we do have to scrutinize their orders, and it's always a little odd for me because it's a high school, and so I'm saying, okay, I think that's a good product for the high school, and do my best, my diligence, but they always ask for appropriate things, so it's been not too bad.
Cliff, it'd be the same thing if we all voted no on the milk like Don. We would just have no milk.
There you go.
thank you for that. All right, under C, policy revisions, it looks like there will be no policy revisions that we will be voting on for the next meeting. So we'll move on to D, finance. Mr. Anderson, if you will.
Sure. At the next meeting, myself or someone else will be moving. First item will be obviously our checklist. Second would be to approve the publish of an advertisement for bid solicitation for the sale of a piece of equipment that one of our special services students had to use. No longer, the district is no longer in need of, and we believe there are others that may need it. So we're going to look to sell that. We talked about that in finance. Accept a donation of $2,500 from the Denville Education Foundation to support the Blues and Beyond program at Valley View Middle School. Dr. Cullis mentioned that earlier about the date that they have the final residency that runs pretty much through the month of March. My daughter actually already came home from school and talked about it. So, and then the board to approve Mathnasium of Denville to provide tutoring services for select students for the remainder of 2023-2024 school year at the cost of $23,340, funded through the High Impact Tutoring Grant. A monthly fee of $600 per student will be split between the participating families at $100 per month, with the grant paying the remaining $500 per month. Financial scholarships are available for qualifying families. And then next resolution will be that the board approve a donation of new books valued at approximately $1,000 to the Riverview Library from parent Alexander Morano, who works for Simon & Schuster Publishing Company. And then to add on to that, the board approved the ongoing donations of new books to the Riverview Library by Riverview parent Alexander Morano, who works for Simon & Schuster Publishing Company.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Questions? Actually, I had a question about the Mathnasium tutoring services. Is that a budgeted amount of $23,340, or is that an actual line item because we have that many enrolled in the Mathnasium?
That's the amount that we dedicated from the High Impact Tutoring Grant towards that. So that's 11 students.
That's 11 students.
Because we pay 500 and they pay 100 a month for the rest of the year.
And what happens if we exceed 11 students who have interest in using these services?
It's recommended. So we select the students, we offer it to them, and I would put it at like one person at a time, and then they would decide, just so because I couldn't go over. However, the other part of this grant, we have not, those are the in-school tutors that are there 5 days a week. We have not started, the third tutor has not come on board yet. They've still going through the hiring process. So we may have some additional funds that I might allocate to Mathnasium. But right now, it has been a great relationship and our students are doing quite well there. So
Yeah,
we're pretty
fantastic.
excited about it.
I've heard great things about that, and I was wondering, so it's by invitation only, and on the side, you have other tutoring services that you're going to offer, like sort of in school then?
We do. We have 3 tutors between 20, each one has 20 to 25 hours a week. And they're before school, after school, and then during the day too, where they're pushing into classrooms and working with groups of students, that have been recommended through the TSS teams.
Thank you. Do we
And all in math, I'm sorry, all in math.
all in math? Great, thank you. Do we? Last question: do we often get high schoolers to help tutor, or whether it's over the summer or during the school year? My daughter actually tutors on Khan Academy when she has time, but I'm wondering how often do we reach out to the high schools to have them tutor our students?
We have not. We have only gone through programs that have a security protocols in place, only because that means we would need to hire or have someone on staff to supervise it at our site. We went through back and forth with this, just like if we do virtual, we don't want to give access virtually to other people. And we also didn't want to give in-person access to a student if we didn't have another adult there. And that is why we have it. However, the high schoolers do come in the building and help out. So we don't have any like out of school tutoring, but they do come, the classes. So the gifted and talented class at the high school, the Teach for America or Future Teachers group comes, and also vocational school comes. So regularly they come every week.
Okay, great. Thank you. You answered my question. Thanks. Awesome.
I had a question too on that. It's a great program. You indicated the children are doing well. Do we have any like specific metrics? And also, are they categorized? You have kids that are struggling in the math, they're probably below average. And then you have kids that are doing average in math, and then you have kids that are excelling. So how is the breakdown in terms of the demographics in the tutoring program?
I do receive a weekly report. So parents signed a a release of information to me so that I can share it with their teachers. So they had an assessment at the beginning, and I get a weekly report of what they worked on and where they are, and how, because they get little assessments as they go, and how far they're moving on the standards. So I get that weekly. The only students that we recommended were students that were below proficiency. So we used 4 different measurements to determine if they were below grade level. Those are the only students that this grant is covering. There are other students there, but I don't get their reports. I only get the ones from this particular one. And the grant is set up to be 3rd and 4th grade primarily. We could do some 5th grade. So it's 3, 4, and 5. And we were able to get like 2 6th graders in, because the state grant is really targeted at that middle grade for for this program.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So moving on through the agenda, E, operations. Mr. Cass, you want to take us through that for our next meeting?
Certainly, as of now, nothing under number 1, transportation. Under building grounds, we have item 2.1 for the board to recommend, on the recommendation of the school business administrator, the Board of Education approves the membership in the following national purchasing cooperative: Keystone Purchasing Network in Milton, Pennsylvania. And there's a little biography there about Key Purchasing Network. It's a cooperative purchasing organization that coordinates many public sector contracts approved by lead agencies throughout the country. The board is permitted to purchase from vendors and contractors who are awarded contracts by lead agencies of the Keystone Purchasing Network. The school business administrator would recommend all purchases awarded by the lead agencies in full compliance with the New Jersey Local Finance Notice 2012-10. Item 2.2, that the board approve the attached lease with Lakeland Hills YMCA to provide aftercare and before care September 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2026. Rental fees per fiscal year are as follows: 2024, 2025, $32,000 annually. And for 2025, 2026, $34,000 annually. Item 2.3 is for the board to approve the attached proposals from EI Associates for professional engineering services, for professional design services, the middle school site development feasibility study, in the amount to $18,000. And item 2.4 is that the board approve the attached proposals from Lakeland Surveying Incorporated for survey services and topography in reference to the Nicole Drive property in the amounts of $13,500. We discussed this in detail at the committee meeting, so we probably should have some discussion on that. We, with the tight budget we're experiencing, I guess the consensus at the meeting was we could do it or not do it. There wasn't anybody really pushing for it or not to do it. So we want to benefit of everybody else's input on that. Under technology, asking the board to authorize the business administrator to dispose of the attached list of obsolete non-functional district equipment.
Let me just go back to 2.3 and 2.4. So they work together. I know it says middle school. That's just the way that they identify, or they labeled their proposal, but it's a feasibility study of the entire property at that we own on Nicole Drive. So it's including the new piece of Nicole Drive and the other 27 acres. The first part of the project would be to have Lakeland Surveying complete a more comprehensive survey. The survey they have now is basically just the kind you get when you buy a house, and it puts out the different corners. This would be topography, and it will identify different landforms and wetlands and things like that on the property. Then our architect would the study includes them seeing, would a middle school fit? Would an elementary school fit? Would the bus garage fit? In a combination of one of the two schools and a bus garage. So it's a feasibility study to see whether or not that property is actually what it would actually be feasible for. For example, if we know we've been having problems with flooding by the bus garage, but we most likely wouldn't want to move the bus garage up there if that meant there's no longer enough room to put a school at someday. So this would be the first thing. In the committee, I noted that it's not something we need to do immediately. We could pull this off, and I'm okay with it. But I think we just need to remember that this is probably something to start in the next couple of years to see whether or not this is something that I think it would be good to know what we could actually do with the property. And right as of right now, considering our presentation from the space committee, the instructional space committee, we're not at the point now where we need to do anything at that space. This is really just a preliminary thing. But remember, if we get to the point where we actually need to do something, we're probably about 5 years from the point of planning to actually having somebody move in there. So just keep it in your mind. I'm okay with doing it now. Damaris is okay with doing it now. I'm also okay with delaying it. It depends on, the feelings of the board.
Yes, please.
I agree. I think there's no real reason to wait to do this study. The topography is not going to change, barring any, land falls or whatever. So I think it's in our best interest to do it now so that we can answer the questions in the other committees. So the Finance Committee can approve it moving forward, and then the Space Consideration Committee and the Transportation Committee will have all the information that they need to move forward.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's not like the budget issues are going to change next year around, right? It's going to continue to be challenging. So I think we'd rather do this. This is an important one. We should get it done and then use that data.
So the only flip side of that coin is we've gone way further down the road about 10 years ago where we actually had architectural plans, and now our architect is saying those are irrelevant. So if we do it now and then we don't need to build for 10 years, we may need to do it again. That's the only downside. Now, that being said, as Dr. Forte is explaining it today, and I actually had a conversation with Mr. Kim about it earlier today, just kind of how my feelings were like, well, if we don't know we have a need to build anything right now, why do it now is part of my feeling. The flip side of that coin, I guess, and it literally changed my mind a little bit as Dr. Forte was talking tonight, we actually have no idea if that space is usable at all. So if it's not usable at all, we may have to have a serious another discussion because we have no idea what properties in town are buildable at all, period, right? And I know that years ago they went through, and I look at Mr. Cass because he probably was the only one that was on the board at the time, over a full look at every property in town that was available because they were much further along. I believe they determined at that point that that property was buildable, whether it was ideal or not. I would want to know, Dr. Forte, like what level of detail are we getting out of this? My fear is we would spend $18,000 and then it wouldn't give us the level of detail that we would want. And then we would be in for another, $18,000 for another study of like, oh, I didn't realize you wanted to know how big of a school you can put there or something along those lines. So I would just want to understand, like, are we going to get out of it? How big of a school could we build there? Could we put a bus garage and a lot of different questions on what are the potential options there. But I guess I said at the committee meeting, and I guess I still kind of feel this way. I guess I can go either way on this, but we are in a really, really tight budget time period. So in general, I feel like let's take a deep breath and at least get through budget season and revisit this in a few months, maybe. But if there's another feeling on it that we need to get it done, then I'm generally okay with it. But I'd want to see more details on what the study would give us.
I have an idea. Why don't we pull it from March? Why don't we put it on May? And in the April operations finance committee, I'll start a Google Doc so that because I don't want to like ask 5 questions and then there's 5 more, like let's decide what all the questions are. I'll send them to our architect, have him answer them, and then we can have something to work from. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you back in the day, if I recall, and you should have the architect sketches, drawings of that site somewhere. I know I turned some of them in, but we got more acreage now than we had before, which is a good thing. But my recollection is we had slope issues that restricted some areas we could build on, and you have that well that's been capped. There's a lot of wetlands up there in that area of town. Like my daughter's property has 2 wells with slabs on them, so you could have some wetland issues up there too. I've been up there, so good. So the one thing is that we're dealing with space. So if they do the right type of study, you would know what you can do there. I like Mike to repeat what Mike said. Middle school, a school only, whatever, elementary or middle, whatever it is, or the bus garage, where you could do both. I mean, there's a lot of acreage here now, 27 acres, but be prepared for some pushback from the community up there. They weren't happy about a school going up there 10 or 12 years ago, and if you're a conservationist like I am, I mean, I'm watching all this acreage, all these forests just being destroyed in Denville for the cluster housing and everything. So I know it's a necessity that we have adequate space for the students and get the bus garage out of there. But you're going to get some pushback from people when they see that area being cut down.
Mr. Capello?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is I was also thinking about it. We could do this on a rolling basis. With budget concerns, the topography is not going to change, and you can get an absolutely clear picture of what the wetlands look like and what the topography is this year. And we could do the second phase next year, or even a little beyond. But I think that would also give us some clarity in terms of what are we thinking we might need. So in terms of budget, split it apart. Also from just spacing it out and giving us some time to think about it, I'd be open to that too as a possibility.
I was just thinking that too. Like maybe we should leave the topography study on for approval in March, get started. That's going to take a while. And then probably we'd like to approve the other one too, though, this year, just because we know we have the money in this year's budget. And next year's budget, if it gets too tight and we have to come up with 18,000, and that 18,000 will probably be more by next year too. That was just my thoughts. So why don't, if everybody's okay with it, what we'll do is we'll pull the second part, the EI study, from the next agenda. We'll leave the Lakeland survey on the agenda. We'll once we approve it, we'll tell the Lakeland survey to get started on the topography. Then I'll in the April Finance Ops Committee, I'll start a Google Doc with the group, share it out so everybody has a chance to put in some questions. I'll get those questions answered, and then we'll put it back on the agenda later in this school year. Hopefully, I'd like to use this year's money, and then have that project approved maybe later in May or June for a project over the summer.
Yeah, it sounds like that's a good proposal. So one last question. We can't use reserve funds for this? No? Okay. All right. Okay, so Dr. Forte, I think your suggestion is a good one. So, and moving on to the rest of the agenda. For the good of the cause, committee reports, correspondence, discussion items.
Just a quick announcement from a liaison perspective. I'm the liaison for the Denville Education Foundation. They are having a fundraiser on May 11th at Rock Ridge Country Club. It's a spring fling band night with a couple of local Denville bands that are going to be there. So their website, denvilleedu.org, I believe it is, provides a link to purchase tickets if you're interested or if you know others. So that was the only thing I wanted to report from the foundation. May 11th.
Yes, Ms. Adels.
I just wanted to say thank you to the parents and teachers and students for Read Across America last week, or 2 weeks ago already. Was it 2 weeks ago already? It was last week, right? Friday the 1st. That was, oh my goodness, that was, yeah. There was a line to get in. It was, nowhere to park. So I'm glad that the community could come out and, visit their children at school and read. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, especially to the teachers.
Yes,
I had
please
one
go ahead.
more thing real quick. Mr. Kim earlier gave a moment of silence for a community member and a former staff member of ours who unfortunately passed away this past weekend. I just wanted to remind everybody the impact that our staff have on our students. 2 of my kids had Mrs. Granito as a teacher, and I could personally tell you my kids were telling me stories from 2nd grade class on the impact that she had on them. So obviously my condolences to the Granito family. but also, thank her and the family for the impact that she's had on the community and our students.
And just another note with that, even beyond, she was my daughter's first kindergarten teacher in another town. So it was her very first job. And my daughter wanted to be just like her because she got married then and had a beautiful wedding dress. And she said she was a beautiful princess and she wanted to be just like her. So just a very special person.
Thank you. Okay, there's a few things I just wanted to touch upon. My daughter came home the other day coming from the Blues and Beyond concert, and she couldn't stop talking about it. So I really encourage any board members who haven't had the chance to sit in on the sort of that presentation that they have. If they have time, please check it out because it's a great experience. I personally felt it was a great way for them to connect with the students and to teach them something about history as well. So music history, jazz history, etc. Steve, the one request I have is the governance committee. Now that the finance committee is done with the budget and stuff like that, if we can look to maybe get the first meeting for May for the ad hoc governance committee, that would be something that I'd be interested in doing. And finally, the Unsung Heroes Award ceremony. It's the nomination ceremony is what I should call it, is on March 20th. As a reminder, there will be a Denville student being nominated as well. So his name is Mark Tierson Jean-Louis, so from Valley View. He will be honored as a nominee for the awards that they would be giving out later this year. So this is sort of a nomination ceremony. And once again, that date is March 20th between 5:30 and 8:30 p.m. on Wednesday, March 20th at College County of Morris. Any other comments or additions? In that case, we'll open up to public comments at 8:52 p.m. No one's online as well, and no one's in the chambers, so we'll close it at 8:52 p.m. Dr. Forti, do we have a need for executive session?
Yes, but just let me go over my board notes.
Yes, please.
I have two things. I have Foundation of Denville fundraiser when I give the link to the webpage, and that the board approved the preliminary 24-25 budget, and the final budget hearing will take place on April 29. What do you?
Yes.
Should we add something about the moment of silence? I was wondering. Yeah. All right, I'll do that too.
Okay, Ms. Adelis, can you take us into executive session, please?
Sure. I move to convene an executive session in accordance with Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act. The purpose of this closed session will be to discuss negotiations, legal, security, and personnel issues. Minutes of this session will be made available to the public when the need for confidentiality no longer exists.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions? So we will be going into executive session at 8:54 p.m. For purposes of this, for the public online, we will no longer be voting when we come out of executive session, so we will be adjourning immediately after. Thank you for joining us tonight.